welcome back to Career Talks with Germanportals. We have with us Samarth over here again, and in the previous session with him, we discussed about his experience as a student and his masters during his ENTECH study program in Germany for his masters. And in this session, we are basically going to understand about his movement from being a student towards professional life, how he has transitioned into that journey, why he did what he did, and also insights from his experience working in the energy space. Samarth, thank you for being here again. And to start off with, you studied at Karlsruhe and in Lisbon, and you've basically moved towards doing a PhD as well as a job. So let's start with the PhD first. Can you like just describe your journey as to how did you move towards PhD, what did you have to do to get it, and also about the topic.
So like I said in the previous video that during my masters I got a lot more interested into the energy policy side of things,
right.
Because as we worked I realized that it's really policies that are a driving force that will lead to us solving the issue of climate change.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where, but my background was much more in engineering.
Mm-hmm.
So I needed to complement that knowledge, not to say that knowledge is not useful at all, even in what I'm doing now,
mm-hmm.
but to get really into energy policy, I needed to complement it with knowledge of economics and more diverse things that you need to take into account when you're talking about energy policies. Energy policy is a much broader aspect, right? So you have to take into account the social aspect of it and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what led me to decide to go for energy economics PhD. And the way I got the PhD was basically my master's thesis supervisor recommended some professors that I can contact. I wrote to them, and one of them told me that there is this opening that is available and you can apply to that. And then I applied to it, and then I got it. So that's how I got the PhD.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where are you doing the PhD from, and what is the topic of the PhD?
So I'm doing my PhD in TU Dresden,
Mm-hmm.
and the topic is basically looking at Central Europe and seeing what role the interconnection between the countries can play in ensuring security of electricity supply.
Alright.
Because the German grid is interconnected, so Germany has connection with all its neighbors. So what I'm looking at how important that role is and what role it can play in ensuring security of supply. Yeah.
Okay. And how does a normal day in your life as a PhD candidate look like?
As a PhD candidate, of course, you are doing a lot of research. So your normal day looks like reading research papers, doing data analysis, collecting data. I work with models, so working on the model, refining the model, and so on. So it's intensely research oriented work, obviously. But also in Germany, the PhD programs is somewhat different from, let's say, US or in India, where it is not at all structured. So PhD program is almost treated like your private project, like personal project. So the professors are there to answer your questions,
right.
but they're not going to tell you what to do.
Right.
You have to decide what you have to do,
right.
and they can answer the questions. Of course, there are some constraints within which you have to work, but generally you have to decide on your own.
A very interesting thing you said, it's like your private projects, more or less like a product you own and you have to kind of take it forward and give it the vision.
Exactly, yeah.
Interesting. Alright. What kind of skills did you need to develop?
So I think this would depend. So because my PhD or my work is very data heavy. So what you need to develop is good data handling, data management, data processing skills, and which means Like for example, I use Python for all my data analysis work, and because Python is so powerful, so that's what I developed even before during my masters, but also during the PhD program. And then in my case, because I was coming from engineering background and now it was economics, I also had to do some courses at the university to meet the criteria. But that means generally developing knowledge about different fields than what you are used to.
Okay, so Python, SQL as well, maybe?
Little bit, not really. I did not work with SQL, but if you do have SQL knowledge, it is very useful. Right now in my job, I am using SQL a lot more. But main workhorse for my work is Python basically.
I understand. Okay. And for someone like say just of a weak question for someone from an energy background wanting to do a PhD, what is the way you suggest? How does a person get to like completing a PhD in the energy space?
So
a finding rather also.
Finding. Okay, yeah. So I think your best chance of finding PhDs is like how I found, for example, through if you have some contacts, that's a great way. But then the second approach I usually suggest when people ask me is to read up a paper from a professor you want to contact and write to the professor asking some questions about the paper. And generally researchers are very happy if someone asks any questions about the work that they have done, so you will really get a response. And then you can try to build up a connection and try to ask them about what to do next and so on. So I think that's if you send cold emails, it generally does not result in responses. So it's better to just use that as your way to get into contact with professors.
I mean, I honestly speaking, Samarth, like that is one of the most insightful tips that you could have given, because for all the students who coming to us asking us about how to do PhD, like this what he said is exactly like the most effective way if you're going to look at getting a PhD, especially from India directly. Otherwise,
and one more thing that you should, if you have a general email template that you are sending to people, that just means you are doing it wrong. If you should really, every email that you are writing, it should be tailor-made to the person that you are contacting, because the professors know they can, as soon as you read emails, you can, or your motivation letter or whatever. I mean, I have looked at some applications, and as soon as you see an application which looks like it's a generic application that can be applied anywhere, you will be filtered out.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, so basically, because every PhD topic or every professor is working on a different set of topics, you need to kind of really generate his personalized interest in you, and that can only happen if you basically, as Samarth said, kind of make it a personalized and individual application approach. Coming to the second part of this session, which is about your job, right? So normally when a person does their PhD, it takes up the entire time. It's a full-time job on its own. Why did you decide firstly to do a job, or how did you end up coming to do a job?
So there also it was, I mean, the luck always has a big role to play in these things. I got lucky with the job, so there was. I actually was in contact with the think tank that I'm working at right now for a project that I was doing during my PhD. So I happened to go to their website, and I was just, I wrote to them basically communicating about this project that I was working with them on. And then I happened to see that they had a job opening, and that fit really well to what I wanted to do. And so then that's how I applied for it, and that's how I got it.
Okay, great. So essentially again here two networks came into the picture.
Yeah, networks play an important role, and again it's the difference between a cold application, which also which can work, but in this case it was that I kind of had a little bit of contact with them before, and I happened to see the job opening, which just fit very well with what I wanted and with my skills also. So that's how I got it. Yeah.
Okay. So what is your exact job description, your role description, which company, and what is the kind of work that you're doing in the company?
So right now I'm working at Agora Energy Vinde or Agora Energy. It's a think tank in Germany on energy policy, and but it does not just work in Germany. We work at a European level also. We work at international level also. And what I am doing there is working on the technical analysis part, which is data and modeling.
Right.
So it fits well with my PhD work also.
Right.
And specifically right now I'm working mostly in Southeast Asia. So Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines, Indonesia. And what I'm doing there is basically working to build their scenarios, working with governments and so on, trying to figure out how they can design their energy policies for reaching climate goals in long term.
I understand. Okay, and what are the skill sets or what are the tools that you need for the work that you do?
So for my work again, it's all based on Python and SQL. All the data work is based on Python and SQL, and then the modeling tool we also used is in Python, and it is something called optimization models for energy system, where you optimize a least cost national energy system, how it should look like. So those are the core skill set. But again, like I said, in policy work, you have to be more broad in terms of things that you should look into. So and data is like the very mechanical part of the work, but then you have to interpret that data. So for example, if I'm working on affordability, you have to look into, you have to understand what it means to do affordability analysis for a energy system in a country.
And you have to also look at the social parts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So my PhD program was very interdisciplinary. I actually wrote a paper on interdisciplinarity. So like communication and so on.
Right.
So you really have to look at beyond pure technical things. You have to have a understanding of, or develop understanding. You don't need to have it, but you can develop it, that you need to learn new things about social aspects of energy transition, about affordability aspects, about what is who could be the winners and losers by a certain policy design and so on.
I understand. So this is where your scenario modeling comes into the picture, right?
Exactly. You have some part of it is through the scenarios, but then you have to interpret those scenarios, and when you interpret those scenarios, and when you do policy recommendations based on the output of the model, at that time you have to consider also other facts, other aspects about policy, about society in general, because energy is such a fundamental core of our society. It influences everyone. So you have to take this into account.
Right, absolutely. Totally agree with you. In fact, like I was just thinking, energy is the food for the economy.
Yeah,
you see,
it is. I mean, fundamentally, if you have, let's say, if you had infinite amount of energy, there would be no limitation of what civilization can do. Like there is, like our society is built on energy consumption. And a cheap energy basically means we have power to do whatever we want to do. Yeah.
Right, absolutely. A very insightful talk again here, Samarth. Thank you so much for the time. And guys, if you have any particular questions, you can please put in the comment section. And otherwise, like, share, and subscribe.